to pray, how much more should we realize our need waiting? And when Simon and the others found him, they said, "Hey, everybody's looking for you." And he said unto them, "Let us go into the next towns, that I may preach there also. For this is why I came." And he preached in their synagogues throughout all Galilee, and he cast out devils, or demons. And again, Mark makes note of the fact that he was casting out demons. Notice this is the fourth time that Mark makes a special emphasis upon this fact. "Say nothing to any man, but go thy way, show thyself to the priest, and offer for thy cleansing those things which Moses commanded for a testimony unto them." But he went out and began to publish it much, and to blaze abroad the matter, insomuch that Jesus could no more openly enter into the city, but had to stay out in the deserted places. And they came to him from every quarter. Now, Jesus was trying to have perhaps a little more freedom of movement, but when the news was going out, the leper was cleansed, and all of the healings that were being done, it got so bad that he could not come into the cities anymore because of the throngs. In fact, we find him spending a lot of his time in a little boat offshore so that they couldn't press around him so much. The crowds so often get unruly, pushing, shoving. And so he would push out a little ways from shore in the boat, and there he would speak to them from the boat as they would stand on the shore. And his purpose in telling this man not to tell anybody is to give him a little more freedom of movement, but the fellow didn't obey, went everywhere telling everybody what had happened to him. It's hard to keep a secret when God has worked in your life. Now, it's interesting, Jesus didn't say, "Now look, I want to teach you how to witness, friend. Take this little booklet with 4 spiritual laws. And you go out and you take this religious survey and you ask all these questions, which opens the door. And then you say, well, do you know the 4 spiritual laws?" You see, when God has done a marvelous work in your life, witnessing is the most natural thing in the world. How can you help but just share what God has done in your life? It's just something that becomes so much a part of your life that witnessing is a very natural thing, not a program thing, but a very natural thing. You couldn't shut these people up. He didn't have to have a Tuesday night witnessing night where we go out and, canvass the neighborhood. God was working in the lives of the people. They were being affected and touched by that work of God, and they naturally sought to share what God had done for them. The interesting thing about this leper is, number one, his statement to Jesus, "If you are willing." Is the Lord willing to heal us? Jesus looked upon him with compassion and said, "I'm willing." The second thing is that Jesus touched him. Now, it was unlawful to touch a leper. If you touched a leper, you yourself were considered unclean for a period of time. However, Jesus touched him. But that really wasn't unlawful, because the moment he touched him, he was cleansed. So he was no longer a leper. Immediately he was cleansed. Jesus said, "Now go and show yourself to the priest and offer those things which the law prescribed." Go through the little ritual. So it is interesting to me that God, in the law, made provisions for a man who had an incurable disease, which ostracized him from society. God made provisions for that man with an incurable disease to be returned to society when he was healed of an incurable disease. But how can you be healed of an incurable disease? God made provision for himself to work as he so desired. So this is the law for the leper in the day of his cleansing. And God, under the law, gave that law for the leper in the day of his cleansing. Come and show himself to the priest. He examines him. And then he puts him in a house apart. And after 7 days, he examines him again to see if there be any new blotches or spots or whatever. And if he is clean after the 7 days, then he is to bring in this dove, and they are to kill it, 2 doves actually. They're to kill the one, put the blood in the basin and all, and they're to take the live dove and dip it in this bloody water, and then turn it free, and it flies away with the wings flapping with the blood and all of the dove that was killed as a sacrifice for his cleansing. And he was then cleansed and could return to society. Interesting, though, to me, that God would make provision for him to work. Oh, let's always give allowance for God to work. Let's not try to put God in a box. So leprosy is incurable. Well, give God the opportunity to work if he so desires. God left himself room to work. And if God leaves himself room to work, surely we ought to leave room for God to work. This is the law of the leper in the day of his cleansing. That to me is just absolutely remarkable. I love that particular portion of the Levitical law where God made provision for him to do a miracle. If I want to work and heal a leper, all right, this is the law for the leper in the day of his cleansing. It is interesting in that leprosy is always used in the scripture as a type of sin because it was such a horrible, loathsome disease that slowly ate away. First of all, it actually doesn't eat away except that it destroys the nerve endings. And so people became deformed as the result of the leprosy because they lost feeling. First, it began in the extremities of their bodies, usually in their fingers or on their feet. And the first thing that leprosy does is numb your senses. It kills the nerves so you don't feel anything. And because they can't feel anything, pain or whatever, they've lost their sense of feeling. The lepers quite often have their feet gnawed away by rats. And they don't feel it. While they're sleeping at night, the rats will just eat their feet. And they don't feel it because of the leprosy having destroyed the nerves. Or they'll put their hands down on a hot plate or a stove and they'll burn their hands and get the gangrene and all as a result of burns. They can't feel it. And so the damage is done actually because they don't have feeling. They say, his finger dropped off. No, a leper's finger doesn't drop off. But because they have lost the feeling in their hands, in their fingers, many times they are burned or destroyed in other ways because of this loss of feeling. Sin has a way of just anesthetizing a person, a loss of feeling, and slowly you're destroyed. Incurable, except by a divine work of God. And so Jesus said, I'm willing, be thou clean, go, show yourself to the priest.
We'll return with more.